This morning, my daughter was recounting to me an event she went to, and it was a social event. It involved some sporting competition. And she, I guess, had the epiphany that when she does sports, she can't do them. Well, this is how she said it. I can't do sports because I'm way too competitive. And she recounted kind of losing her temper or beating herself up when she would fail at a task that was related to the sporting event, that there's no reason she should have expected herself to be able to do it, but nevertheless, it's the hyper-competitive nature. And it struck me in that moment. She's in my image. She is in the image of her father. She was describing to me exactly how I have behaved in the past and like to think I've overcome that ultra-competitive nature. Hello and welcome to My Daily Walk, the show where a Hollywood guy, that's me, walks around and talks about anything and everything except the things I'm contractually bound to conceal. And if you want to get in on the conversation, suggest a topic, tell you how much you love me or hate me, that's fine. I can take it. I can handle criticism. Email me at mydailywalk@thiswaytv.com. I will read those emails on the air. I will not disclose your personal details. In fact, at the most, I will, if you put it in the subject line, just the city, either the city where you are, the city where you're from, or any random city around the planet, I don't care. You will be identified by that city name only, and then I will read the body of your text. Well, I'll preview it, and if there is objectionable material or anything that I deem unnecessary to broadcast, I will self-edit. I will edit those. I'm constantly self-editing, but I will edit those emails. I'll preview them and then read them on the show on Fridays. There is a different theme each day of the week. Today is Meditation Monday, and I am finally broaching a topic that I teased in the past, but I've decided, yeah, this is a good day. I'll meditate on this one. So Meditation Mondays are spiritual meditation. Tuesdays are life lessons, just recounting stories from my past that perhaps I've learned something from, and maybe you will as well. I don't know. It's just me talking about myself. Yeah, this is an exercise in narcissism, I suppose. You could say that, but maybe not. Wednesdays are topical Wednesdays, various topics. I've got a list that keeps growing of things that interest me and possibly interest others. That's Wednesdays. Thursdays is Hollywood theme Thursday. I talk, because I am a Hollywood guy working in Hollywood on a project, and I've been working in Hollywood for a while. I've got a bunch of stories behind the scenes that might interest people, things I've gone through, what things are really like in this town. That's Thursdays. And Fridays are free form, but I also read emails, so I have been reading emails. Sometimes I'll just babble on about whatever pops into my head. I don't do a lot of show prep for this show, but Fridays I do less than nothing in prep. I just start recording and here we go. Let's see what happens. So and then Saturdays we do have free stuff Saturdays. It's very different. I don't typically do the big introduction and tease, and Saturdays are different things. If the emails get too much or too many, at that point I'll have an overflow for Saturday free stuff. So there it is, 6 days a week, different topics or different themes each day. Email me again, MyDailyWalk@thiswaytv.com. All right, let's see. Any other business I need to take care of before I launch into this? No, I think that's good. So, Imago Dei. I guess that's the way you pronounce it. I didn't look up the pronunciation key. But image of God is from Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. Let's see. Can I pull it up real quick and actually read it? Let's see. Well, let's see. I do have it pulled up. There it is. All right. Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. Am I an authority on this subject? Well, I'm not a Hebrew scholar. I'm not a Greek scholar. I don't have a degree in philosophy or theology from any institution. However, I am a created being, purportedly in the image of God. So I have some insights, I suppose, on this subject. As if you Google it, I'm sure you'll find plenty more that people have said in the past. But my take, or some of my insights, I'll just launch into it. Image of God. Now, the hyperliteralists, I suppose I guess you'd call them hyperliteralists, but maybe even children. The small child, if you say to a small child that you are in the image of God, the child will maybe not quite process the word image as it was intended, but a child will say, "Oh, I'm a boy. God must have two legs, and he must like playing with toys." So what does that mean? You're in the image of God. And what about us is in the image of God? Well, does God have two arms, two legs? Does he have genitalia? Does God... Well, you know what I mean. Does he have a long white beard, and he's wear a robe, and he sit on a big throne in the sky? And one day the heavens will part and you'll see a big guy sitting on a throne in the sky? I mean, elsewhere in Scripture, he's enthroned, right? He is enthroned above the heavens. So something about language, something about communicating. Poetry. What is poetry? Poetry is communicating meaning that can't be communicated in other ways. Language is inherently limited. There's plenty of things that we can state clearly with language, but like, oh, there's a ball bouncing. Every one of you see a ball bouncing in your mind, and there's no alternate interpretation that would pop into people's minds. Oh, there's a ball bouncing. But image of God, whoa, what does that mean? There's this idea that there is a creator or an originator or a necessary being or a necessary agent, a necessary mind for the universe as we know it to exist. And you just can't, when you say the image of God, if God created all things, if this is the notion is that this being, it was the causal agent, without the volition of this agent, nothing would exist. Well, that includes the three-dimensional realm. A one-dimensional realm is inconceivable. A two-dimensional realm is somewhat conceivable. Cartoons, 2D, just a flat piece of paper with lines on it, but you couldn't even perceive it without the third dimension. So, fourth dimension, I suppose, is time. I'm not positive that that is it, but there's supposedly about 11 dimensions exist. This may be the first time you've heard that, but my understanding from the really, really smart guys, the astrophysicists and the quantum physicists, that there are a minimum of 9 and maybe as many as 11 dimensions. But just like a one dimension is inconceivable, 9 to 11 dimensions is also inconceivable to the average mind. So, if this being that purportedly created all these things actually created them, then he is not constrained by those dimensions. The artist is not stuck within the art. The art wouldn't exist if the artist was stuck, right? It's like a categorical fallacy. The creator is not in the category of created things. Or the artist, just use the artist analogy. The artist is not in the category of art. A painter is not a painting. Well, I would argue that yes, actually the Bible says we are a poem. We are God's workmanship or handiwork. It's poema. Is it Greek? Again, I'm not an expert in ancient languages, but poem, I believe, is a Greek word, and it's the one used in that verse, wherever it is, that we are God's handiwork, his workmanship. We are a poem. So we are a work of art, but that gets back to the necessary artist. Right? God is the necessary being, the necessary artist. So if such a being exists, then he would not be a part of his creation. He would be independent of it, and therefore would not have a pair of legs or genitalia or arms or so. But then there's this assertion in chapter 1 that man is made in the image of God. So we have to rule out some of the conclusions. No, he doesn't like playing with Matchbox cars. Well, I mean, he may, but he's not the little boy. Right, that conception of image. God is an artist. This is my understanding. So here's one of my understandings of being in the image of God, that we as humans are causal agents. We can cause things to happen. We can bring things about by our volition. We're not able to create, or we don't cause the things that happen to us, but we can respond to the things that happen to us that will affect potentially other things that happen to us. So in one sense, yes, we cause the things that happen to us, but we aren't. Like if I randomly run into somebody at the store and that person was just thinking about me, oh, I needed to talk to you about such and such, and just that meeting at the store leads to another meeting, or blah, blah, blah. Like, I didn't know he was going to be at the store, and I maybe didn't know which aisle you have these random encounters with people, and you don't cause those encounters to happen. You don't cause the other person to make the decisions they make, but the decisions you made brought you into that person's presence. So it's kind of a tangent about causality, but that's what we're talking about. And so the image of God, the thing that makes most sense to me is that the creator aspect, an artist. And now, not everyone is creative. Or the attribute of creativity is not something. I mean, to me, as a creative person, I can't really imagine not being creative. But I'll take it. I'll take the authoritative opinion of those who study these things that say not everyone has that capacity of creativity. But I would suggest that everybody does have certain elements that are essential to creativity, such as decision making and judgment and rationality, and making decisions that would be beneficial to the continuation of life, whether it's the individual's life or the family life or the human species. So there are things, I think innovation or to me, innovation is creativity. Anybody who you can just plan, if you make a plan, that to me is creativity. It may not be, there's maybe a narrower definition of creativity, but when I say the creative aspect that I experience when I'm writing or imagining, endeavoring to communicate something, that is Imago Dei. That's as fine a point as I can put on it when I think about that phraseology, the volition, the presence of mind to assess one's environment, one's situation, and make decisions that are advantageous or beneficial, whether it's just pure aesthetics, creating a piece of art that just people see and they are filled with life when they see it. It's like, wow, that's beautiful. That is life. When you sing a song, or when you write some words that people respond to, you are creating life. You are literally creating life, not out of nothing. You're not a zygote, but within the human soul. Why do we go to movies? Why do we go to concerts? Why do we listen to music? Because those things give us life. They give us a reason to live often, but they inspire us. What is inspired? It's to breathe in. Circling back to from the dust of the earth. He breathed life in. So to be inspired is to receive life, is to have life come into you. And so we as creators create life in others. So that's about as fine a point I can put on it. But I do have kind of another direction that I want to cover, since I'm covering Imago Dei. So image of God, the very last sorry, I got a text in the middle of this and I looked at it and it was good news and it makes me happy. Tease, if you want to know what it is, email me and ask, what was it you just got texted? I'll just say it was a one-word text. It was YA, a positive affirmation of something that I was wondering. There, that's a tangent, which I'm allowed to do. It's my show. All right, back to the topic, Imago Dei. So there's this notion of patriarchy, of a patriarchal hierarchy in human systems and in human government and governing, and I don't know, and people attribute it to these patriarchal world religions like Judaism and Christianity. The problem is God's not a man and God's not a woman. Yet he is both, in the sense that he created both, he understands both, they are both essential. And in that verse, let me read just the last part of it again to make it perfectly clear. Male and female, he created them. In other words, Imago Dei doesn't mean that only men are in the image of God. It is women are in the image of God, and that should be self-evident. We have more in common as Homo sapiens than we do as gendered. Right? Men have a lot in common, women have a lot in common, but men and women have more in common with each other than we do just with our gender or our sex, our birth sex, or what our DNA tells us, what our DNA tells the universe we are. Okay, I'm broaching a controversial subject. You're born what you are. You can't change your DNA, period. You cannot change your DNA. Your DNA is what it is, will always be. People are unhappy with how tall they are or how short they are, but that's the DNA. Deal with it. So if people are unhappy with, I wish I had blue eyes instead of brown eyes, there's nothing, yeah, you can wear contacts, but your DNA will not change when you put the contacts in. Same with gender dysphoria, or people have dissatisfaction with themselves over any number of topics. But those things are unchangeable. They're called immutable characteristics. But the good news is, all of us who have human DNA, every single one of us are in the image of God, according to Genesis 1:27, Genesis chapter 1, verse 27. And that is a radical notion among world religions. So plenty of world religions use teachings manipulatively and coercively, and Christians are not innocent in this regard. People that purport to represent Christianity have done some awful, awful things in the world. But I would argue that those things are not Christianity, or not what Jesus taught, not the truth, but are rather abuses. But this notion, radical notion, that both male and female of the species are in the image of God. Therefore, at the very least, it has nothing to do with the physical body morphology. Right? The humans have two, what's the expression? Forms. Right? There are only two natural body forms. There's plenty of birth defects and mutations and exceptions to the rule, but the exceptions actually prove the rule. And so God does not regard a gender as superior or inferior, because both are in his image. That does not negate the differences. There are genetic, inherent differences between the genders, and there's a continuum. Obviously, there's plenty of women who behave more like males, and plenty of women who behave like males that consider themselves women and are attracted to men. And the other extreme, there are plenty of women who act like males who are attracted to women, and vice versa. There's plenty of men who are effeminate and are attracted to women. Plenty of men who are effeminate and attracted to men. And the other extreme, plenty of men who are masculine and butch who are attracted to men. And plenty of dainty, effeminate women who are attracted to women. So it's not cut and dry. There's continuum of behaviors. But if you separate it out, the majority of each gender have their categories of behaviors that are more prevalent and predominant in the genders. I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like, in general, men tend to be more physical and whatever activities would require that. right? And in general, women tend to be more relational and activities that would require. And so we should not deny what we are in the face of people getting all up in arms about the exceptions, right? The exceptions are what are driving people crazy. There's plenty of exceptions, and I'm being very clear about that. I'm not painting with a broad brush and, generalizing. The fact is, we cannot transform our worldviews based on all of the minuscule exceptions. Our worldview needs to be clear. God is no respecter of persons, whether you believe in him or not. That's one of my favorite retorts, I suppose, is deciding not to believe in something or deciding to believe in something does not change the fact of the thing. Like, you can deny that. Here we go. You can deny that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. It doesn't change the fact. Okay, maybe that'll rile some people up and they'll want to email me. It's kind of an absurd example, but statistically he is. Like, he's won more Super Bowls than any other quarterback. He's been to more Super Bowls than any other quarterback. He has all these records that some say will never be broken. So Tom Brady. But because you hate the Patriots and you hate Tom Brady, there's a whole large faction of people that will deny that Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time, and they'll point to other quarterbacks with good records. And problem is, the statistics are what they are. You cannot change them simply by denying them. In the same way, people want to deny God exists, or that God is good, or any number of things. And adamantly asserting that there is no God does not change the fact. I happen to believe there is a God. I happen to believe a great number of things have been demonstrated beyond reasonable doubt, and when put into practice or when applied, they are proven out. And that's my daily walk is exactly that. It's like, certain things I believe, I'm gonna test them out. I'm gonna put them into practice. And when I say my daily walk, I don't mean the show. I mean my daily walk. Every waking moment, every time I get up, I try to apply a certain set of principles that I believe will make my life worth living. And I don't just mean barely worth living. I mean to make my life the only life I would ever want to live. Write that down and email it to me. Whatever I just said seemed to make sense. Anyway, Imago Dei is well, I'm going to finish out this episode with this. I'm going to tease another topic, and maybe I'll do it Wednesday. Maybe this will be Wednesday's topic. If we are in the image of God, it means we are gods. So it doesn't mean we are the God, the necessary being. It just means that there's enough about us that is like God to categorize us as gods. We are deities as opposed to as just animals. We're not just animals. There's something distinct about us that's different. And people get confused about it, but if you look at the history of the world, there's no question that humans have the ability to create and destroy. So leave it there.